Hi and Assalamualaikum everyone. I am Atika Al-Fateh and this is the Talk Podcast, a show where we discuss current issues with invited guests who are expert in their respective field. So today we are going to discuss a relaxed but interesting issue, which is chrononutrition, a view into skipping breakfast. I know for sure many audience out there are unfamiliar with this word. What is chrononutrition? Is it a new discovery? Nah, it is not a very new discovery. It is a term where we rarely hear and emphasize. Chrononutrition was invented in 1986 by Jean-Robert Rapin, a pharmacology professor, and Dr. Alain Delabos, a doctor nutritionist. Chrononutrition is a new discipline of nutritional science that tries to learn more about how the time we eat affects our health. As a result, what we eat and when we eat are equally important. Nowadays, this topic is getting more popular because it is thought to be the key to explaining why the number of people with obesity and metabolic syndrome is increasing. Despite the fact that the chrononutrition is gaining popularity, scientific data to support its use is still lacking. So, in today's podcast, we are going to delve further into this topic of chrononutrition and how it's related to skipping breakfast. Before we go on, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give a warm welcome to our four guests. We have Ms. Haifa Akila, an expert in the field of chrononutrition. Hi, Ms. Haifa.
Hi.
Okay, and then our second guest is Ms. Shafika Khairiri, a dietetic lecturer from UP Amsterdam. Hi, Ms. Shafika.
Hi.
And then our third guest is Ms. Faziatul Hanim, a health worker from the Ministry of Health Malaysia. Hi, Ms. Hanim. Okay, and then our last guest is Ms. Wanur Amira, a dietitian from Tengku Upper Human Hospital. Hi, Ms. Amira. Okay. First of all, I would like to say thank you to all the invited guests for spending your time to join with me in today's podcast to share your knowledge of chrononutrition and skipping breakfast. Well, to start our discussion session today, we better get a little understanding from Ms. Haifa on what does this chrononutrition mean.
Thank you, Ms. Atika. First of all, have you ever heard of chrononutrition? Chrononutrition is the relationship between dietary intake and circadian clock, which indicates the impact of timing of eating on health. Chrononutrition includes three components of time, which is meal timing, meal frequency, and meal regularity. All these three components could affect the body's circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm are cyclical endogenous processes that occur with a periodicity of approximately 24 hours that is generated by an endogenous clock known as circadian clock or biological clock. Food intake, appetite, digestion, and metabolism may exhibit circadian pattern. Food intake itself also serves as a regulator of circadian clock, particularly the peripheral circadian clock in tissues such as liver and intestine. Synchronizing factors such as light, hormone, and timing of food intake are able to reset the circadian clocks. These factors also could lead to circadian desynchronization when people are exposed to these factors at the wrong time for the internal clock, which might have a negative impact on their health. A separated timing system, which is food clock, is reset by food intake. This food clock participates in the feeding-fasting cycle, and mistime feeding time or when the feeding occurs during usual resting period also can reset the circadian clocks in peripheral organs and the brain. It also can have dangerous effects on metabolic health.
Basically, chrononutrition is like a practice of aligning our dietary habit with our biological clock, right? So the topic we were discussing right now has started to become much more clearer and fascinating. I am so excited and I can't wait to know more about this topic. And I'm pretty sure that the audience out there are also excited just like me. Alright, Ms. Haifa, as you mentioned before, our bodies have a circadian clock, also known as internal clock, which can exhibit circadian rhythm and circadian desynchronization. So, how can we determine our internal clock's pattern, Ms. Haifa?
As I mentioned earlier, each individual has their own circadian clock, right? So, in order to recognize our internal clock patterns, here I would like to share about different types of chrono characteristics, also known as chronotypes. There is individual variability in their rhythm for preferred time of sleep, physical activity, and eating, defined as chronotype. Chronotype differences can be measured through home and Osberg Morinus Ignis questionnaire, and actually there are three chronotypes, including early chronotypes, late chronotype, and intermediate chronotype. For the first chronotype, which is early chronotype or morning type, these types of person prefer to wake early in the morning and feel most active during the early parts of the day and have shorter circadian periods that may play a role in extreme advanced sleep phase. Meanwhile, the late chronotype or evening types awake much later in the day, typically feel most active and motivated in the late evening or at night, and may have longer circadian periods. However, for the intermediate chronotype, they can be either morning or evening type, and the parameter of either the morning or evening type were not clearly described. Not only that, there is an interesting concept of chronotype that can be related to animal behavior. I'm pretty sure that all the audience here are excited to know what this concept. According to psychological and sleep specialist Dr. Michael Browse, there are 4 types of animal chronotype that represent a person's internal clock and rhythm. So, which one do you think can be related to your characteristic? The first animal is lion. This type of person tends to wake early in the morning with lots of energy. However, they are exhausted by the evening. Lion people may have difficulty in maintaining social schedules at night, and exercising in the afternoon or early evenings can help the lion to stay awake longer. The second animal chronotype is bear. Bears have internal clock that can track the rise and fall of the sun, so they need a full 8 hours of sleep at night. 50% of people experience this chronotype as their energy cycle rises and falls with the sun, who is most alert during mid-morning into early afternoon. And for the third chronotype, I think most of the students here can relate with the third animal, which is the wolf. Wolves always have a hard time waking up early, and they are most energetic in the evening. Their habits are just like the night owl, which can stay out or sleep later. And the last one is the dolphin, a light sleeper who is diagnosed with insomnia and which has irregular pattern of wake-up time and bedtime. Dr. Michael suggested for people with dolphin chronotype to eat high-protein breakfast, which can help in insomnia. So, which chronotype do you think you are? But now, how can we relate the chronotypes and dietary intake? Generally, evening or late chronotype people is associated with binge eating behavior and greater evening energy intake, specifically from fewer fruits and vegetable consumption and more fast food and alcohol. In contrast, morning or early chronotype people is positively associated with cognitive restraint, which is able to control over food intake and have lower tendency to overeat in response to hunger.
Wow, that's very interesting information. We can empirically figure out our own internal clock by determining whether we are at the early, late or intermediate chronotype. It will be easy for us to understand the relationship between our chronotype and our dietary habits once we have determined which chronotype we belong to. When Miss Haifa related chronotype to animal behaviors, I was taken aback to learn that I have wolf-like behavior. So I want to ask audience out there, what animals-like behavior do you guys have based on what Miss Haifa has explained just now? Let me know your response in the right-hand comment section. Now, back to the discussion. I was attracted by Miss Haifa's explanation that chrononutrition encompasses 3 dimensions of eating behavior, which are meal timing, meal frequency, and also meal regularity. I believe that this statement is really relevant to the topic of our discussion today, which is skipping breakfast. Actually, we have prepared a video that is related to Miss Haifa's explanation just now. So, without wasting time, let's watch it together. Here we can see two different situations in the previous video. One ate breakfast in the morning to start her day, while the other one skipped breakfast and continue on her regular tasks. I would like to ask the audience out there, do you consider yourself like the individuals in the first scenario or in the second scenario? Let me know your response in the right-hand comment section. Honestly, I am a person who likes to skip breakfast. So, back to Ms. Haifa. As we mentioned before, meal timing, meal frequency, and meal regularity are the three elements of eating behavior covered by chrononutrition. The question is, how does this chronotype relate to skipping breakfast?
Wow, there is a very interesting question. Alright, so now we are going to discuss the association between chronotype and skipping breakfast. But before that, I would like to ask, which one of the chronotype that you think will have a high tendency to be a breakfast skipper? Okay, so from previous study, we have found that the most reported association between eating behavior and chronotype was in terms of meal timing, which is one of the components of chrononutrition that I have said earlier, right? Early chronotype or eveningness was significantly associated with a delay in meal timing compared to the morningness. There's a study by Silva et al. 2016 has reported that later midpoint sleep time on 3 days was significantly associated with later breakfast. And the most commonly reported association between chronotype and eating behavior was breakfast consumption, where individuals with late chronotype were significantly related to breakfast skipper. Nevertheless, another 3 study proves that breakfast skippers were mostly among evening type individuals compared to morning type. About 38 of evening type subjects versus 5% of morning types missed their breakfast in one study. On the other hand, doctors et al. 2018 noted that approximately 60% of evening type individuals were skipping breakfast, which is 2-fold higher than morning type individuals who skip breakfast. Kizera Mota and Crispin 2018 has postulated that evening type individuals were 1.7 more likely to skip breakfast than morning type. In addition, 2 other studies also found that morning type individuals regularly ate breakfast, unlike the evening types. Not only that, evening chronotype also will have high tendency towards consuming few and larger meals and delaying food intake due to later awakening time. They will exhibit lower adherence toward a healthy diet, delay in meal timing, and a habit of skipping breakfast. So, in order to answer Ms. Atika's question, late chronotype people may have a higher tendency to skip breakfast as compared to the early chronotype.
Now I see the connection between skipping breakfast and chronotype. As Ms. Haifa just mentioned, meal timing is the most important factor in the relationship between eating habit and chronotype. The late chronotype was found to be strongly associated with a delay in meal times. Therefore, they tend to skip breakfast. At the beginning, Ms. Haifa has already explained that we have 3 types of chronotype, which are early, intermediate, and late. So I wonder, what makes people have different chronotypes? Perhaps you, Ms. Shafiqah, could you shed some light on my question?
Thank you, Ms. Atika. First of all, I would like to say thank you for inviting me to this podcast. I'm glad to be here to share with you all as little as about the determinants or the common phrase called as factors that contribute difference in chronotypes. First thing first, a sum of the inter-individual and inter-ethnic change in the time of the endogenous circadian cycle that emerge as a difference in chronotype may be explained by the sex genetic variance. In relation to the ethnicity, the UK bio-based study shows that people of British black origin are 1.4 times more likely to have a morning chronotype than white British people, since people of the black ethnicity are more prone to shift. An example of chronotype determinants that I can provide here is gender. The different food timing was based on the daily activity patterns where the women usually eat lunch but the men are at work. A study by the Nahed Miki, ETL 2010, it reported that approximately half of the girls having a breakfast 1 to 2 times or less per week. And another study by the Hannah and Renee 2007 reported that the men significantly more often display eveningness than the women. However, this correlation is still inconsistent due to limited information or relevant confounder that could affect the meal timing. Alright, here's some example for this. But having the children was shown to be a biggest predictor of morningness in women but not in males. Hence, this might suggest that having children is essential social factors influencing a woman's chronotype than having a partner, and that is a possible impact modifier that should be considered when analyzing the survey or a cohort study. Moreover, age is also important determinant of chronotype. The morning chronotype is more prevalent in children, and the eveningness is observed during their puberty. However, the transition towards morningness is observed at 50 years old and above. This statement was supported by the Jun Hyo et al. Studies in 2021, which found the percentage of the middle-aged participant 40 years until 59 years old was eating breakfast significantly higher than the young participant 20 until 39 years old. Change in the chronotype among older adults are generally caused by disruption in circadian biology prompted by the aging process, which also relate to the glucose and lipid metabolism. In contrast with the children, they have a various psychology and environmental variable that have been postulated to predict a higher incidence of evening chronotype. For instance, individuals whose parents did not impose a nighttime routine while they were children more likely to have an evening chronotype during adolescence. Besides, environmental cues such as light are taught to entering the circadian system. Light is known to be the most effective synchronizer of the master clock, and difference in the light-dark cycle across a different latitude and the time zone. It is expected to impact the circadian system, resulting in different chronotype across the globe. For instance, Randall's et al. 2015 reported a cross-country comparison between Germans, Indians, and Slovakians, reported that Germans have a higher incident evening chronotype than Indian and Slovakians. Another study by Horzom 2015 reported that Turkish adolescents are more likely to have a morning chronotype than a German adolescent. Thus, all of these factors, including ethnicity, gender, age, and the like, might influence their chronotype.
Oh, so in short, the determinant of a person's chronotype is determined by 4 factors: ethnicity, gender, age, and life. I believe that age is the determining factor in my chronotype. I enjoy sleeping and waking up late. So maybe that's why I never eat breakfast. Never mind, it's okay. Let's go back to our business again. Okay, the first meal of the day is usually breakfast. It is considered as the most important meal throughout the day. As nutritionist Adel Dabi said in 1960s, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pawn. Breakfast is the most commonly skipped more than lunch and dinner, specifically for young adults in the university and those who wake up late. Apart from the reasons I just mentioned, Ms. Shafiqa, is there any other reasons why someone skips breakfast?
Yes, of course. There are two different factors that contribute to skipping breakfast, which are medical factors and non-medical factors. Non-medical factors include tradition and religion. Tradition and religion have a significant impact on when the people eat. For instance, the Chinese race believes 7 a.m. until 11 a.m. is the optimal time for the carbohydrate-rich meal and small meal later in the day as the body transitions from the active phase to the resting phase. They also believe that high-energy meals in the evening might interrupt sleep on their body function. Other than that, Islam also have a restricted food timing, including during fasting month of Ramadan, where all the Muslims need to be fasting between dawn and sunset. Thus, the first meal of the fasting month is before dawn. However, despite these two religions, England also have their own culture, where their first meal is around 9 or 1 p.m. in the middle of the day, and they take small meals at supper between 4 to 6 p.m. Furthermore, the medical factors that influence skipping breakfast include weight, social schedules, exposure to artificial or dim light, and the health condition. Weight can be seen as one of the determinants of skipping breakfast, where it's linked to the timing and the frequency of the eating episode. Overweight, obese people are more likely to skip breakfast, have a small meal in the morning, eat more in the evening, and have a more eating episode than non-overweight obese people. A study by Al-Musawi et al. 2016 reported that breakfast skippers were found to consume less energy at breakfast while consuming more energy at lunch, afternoon snack, and evening snack. In other words, they prefer to consume less from the main meals and more from the between meals. This statement, also supported by the Dashti et al. 2019, reported that obese women consume small fraction of their meal during morning between 6 a.m. until 10 a.m. More meal during afternoon 2 p.m. until 4 p.m. and evening at 9. The correlation between skipping breakfast and overweight obese is currently identified in early 2020, where a systemic review including 36 cross-sectional and 9 cohort study verified that skipping breakfast increased the risk of overweight and obesity. Moreover, the food timing is consistent between weekdays and weekends is totally caused by the effect of the job and weekend social responsibilities. Extreme morning type show a small shift in the sleep time before work, between work and a free day, although they do accumulate sleep debt during weekend to keep up with the social norm. 2012 reported more than half of the young adult men and women eating while they are doing something else, and half of those respondents said they will rush in the morning to have a nutritious breakfast. Furthermore, more than one-third of the young people said they were too busy to eat healthy meals, eating well required too much time, and it is difficult to find time to sit down and have a meal. This statement was supported by the previous study, which stated the long work hours have been linked to the lack of dietary balance, irregular meals, and late meal. Moreover, a study conducted in New Zealand reported that night workers being more likely to be a certainly evening type, and the jobless being less likely to be a moderate morning type compared to other employers.
Whoa, you have provided a pretty comprehensive explanation. I've become increasingly keen to know more about the determinant of skipping breakfast. Could you tell me more about it?
Yes, sure. Other than that, the time and the length of exposure to artificial or dim light compared to outside daylight may be influenced by the social factor, which will then entrain the circadian clock system. The timing of exposure to intense outside daylight control the sleep phase, and every additional hour spent outside is related with the 30 minutes of the advanced sleep. It may also directly interfere with individual sleep preference, eventually affecting their health. Later bed and the rising hour were related to the increased charge of caffeinated drink, fast food intake, and reduced likelihood of dietary product use among adolescents. Other research, including students and professionals, discovered that those with an evening chronotype consume more alcohol, coffee, and cola, whereas people with the morning chronotype consume more tea. It is shown that evening chronotype is more likely to have an unhealthy lifestyle. A study by June Hugh 2021 found that unhealthy lifestyle is higher among irregular breakfast eaters, and more of them are smokers and heavy drinkers. Last but not least, disease condition and medication use are also determinants of skipping breakfast, which may influence the time of the food intake or have a special dietary recommendation connected to the food timing for proper illness management. For example, conditions like night eating syndrome and sleep-related eating disorder will exhibit a morning anorexia and evening hyperphagia, resulting in food ingestion during the night. Moreover, patients with various glycogen storage disease, including liver cirrhosis, should be monitored, where it is recommended to consume small and frequent carbohydrate-based snacks to avoid hepatic glycogen depletion and early onset endogenous protein breakdown. To conclude, there are many factors that affecting the meal timing, especially breakfast, which include cultural, weight, social schedule, exposure to artificial light, and disease condition.
Now I believe that many people skip breakfast for a variety of reasons, not just because they are busy and don't have time to cook breakfast, but also because of the reasons that Musharika has mentioned before. I was started to learn that the amount of time and length spent in artificial or dim light can also contribute to skipping breakfast. So this is brand new information for me and the rest of the audience. Thank you, Musharika. You have explained the cause of someone skipping breakfast from a variety of perspectives, which made me and of course the audience at home think more broadly. Okay, here I want to share with you guys something I found in my Facebook. Okay, last week I was scrolling through my Facebook and then I came across to an article claiming that those who skip breakfast are more likely to be overweight, obese, and suffer from a variety of health issues. When I first read this article, I was concerned because I am a person who loves to skip breakfast. So I want to ask Ms. Hanim, how accurate is this statement?
Thank you to the moderator for inviting me to this podcast and giving me the opportunity to talk about the implication of skipping breakfast. As mentioned, eating breakfast early in the morning is undoubtedly one of the best ways to start our day. However, skipping breakfast would have a profound impact on our health consequences. I personally think that most people tend to skip due to lack of time, family environment, not feeling hunger, and having misconceptions that eating breakfast leads to being obese. Not only that, some consider breakfast as expensive and not readily accessible, hence dating breakfast does not matter for them. In regards to that, today I would like to highlight the implication of skipping breakfast, in which I will focus on the effect of memory, cognitive function, increase in weight, and cardiometabolic health. In a study by Rani 2020, consumption of high-quality breakfast such as cereal-based breakfast will likely increase the level of cortisol, in which helps to lower the stress level. However, skipping breakfast or consumption of low-quality breakfast will negatively affect the memory and cognitive function due to decline in brain excitability. That person will experience a reduction in short-term cognitive function, such as low attention, slow response, and poor performance at work. Other than that, glucose levels in the body is another reason why skipping breakfast is linked with cognitive function. In general, our brain needs glucose as the main fuel to function effectively. However, skipping breakfast causes depletion in glucose levels in the brain that leads the people to experience hunger, fatigue, and sleepiness.
Yes, Miss Hanim, I agree with you. Our brain really needs breakfast to work efficiently. By the way, since you just now mentioned about the glucose level in the body, can you please further elaborate on how skipping breakfast is related to type 2 diabetes mellitus?
Yeah, a systematic review and meta-analysis performed by Jagubovic 2015 stated that the absence of glucose elevation due to skipping breakfast worsen the postprandial glucose and also impact the insulin secretion, as reflected by both delay in insulin peak and lower the insulin response at lunch and also at dinner. This is because the effect of fasting up until noon has caused a diminished function in beta cell responsiveness and memory, which leads to a reduced and delayed insulin response after lunch and dinner on the no breakfast day. This eventually leads to insulin resistance that usually occurs in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Another explanation in this study shows the effect of circadian clock on glucose homeostasis, in which the circadian misalignment of meal timing and prolonged fasting period due to breakfast skipping may have aggravated postprandial glycemia throughout the day. The transcript levels and circadian phase of peripheral clock genes and genes that is related to glucose metabolisms have been shown to be changed in animals and humans. Thus, it is possible that the worsening of glycemic response after lunch and dinner on the no breakfast day is a result of the disruption in the circadian clock triggered by omission of breakfast. Other than that, March 2020 found evidence that breakfast skipping is associated with 1.75 times increase in body weight and higher prevalence of obesity, with the prevalence of 48% in cross-sectional studies and 44% in cohort studies. This study found that the reasons behind breakfast skipping is associated with changes in appetite and decrease in satiety that eventually cause subsequent overeating and impact the insulin sensitivity. This is supported with a study by Watanabe 2014 confirmed 3 reasons on how skipping breakfast can cause obesity. First, as mentioned earlier, a long starvation in the morning causes that person to conserve energy by eating more than usual during lunch, which can result in the condition that the body does not lose weight but gain weight. Other than that, even though they consume fewer or no calories in the morning, but this group of people who skip breakfast tend to have an increased tendency of eating snacks late at night, having dinner after 8 p.m. and high consumption of soft drinks. All these unhealthy habits due to skipping breakfast will eventually lead to obesity. Second, a far-infrared radiation thermograph test measures thermal release from the body show that participants who skip breakfast have a low body temperature and decrease in energy metabolisms. Lastly, skipping breakfast can cause not only a decrease in physical activities in the morning, but also a decrease in total energy expenditure, which can result in the development of obesity.
Oh, I see. Now we are clear on the relationship between skipping breakfast with type 2 diabetes mellitus and overweight and obese. Actually, I have one more question for Ms. Hanim. Does skipping breakfast cause an implication on our cardiometabolic health?
Thank you for the questions, Ms. Atika. In a study that was conducted by Bonnet 2020 to evaluate the effect of skipping breakfast on cardiometabolic risk factors over a period of at least 4 weeks, the authors found that breakfast skipping as compared with those who consume breakfast led the LDL to increase by 9.24 mg per dl. However, these findings need to be interpreted cautiously as the sample size was small with only 92 participants. But this study is in line with a study by Farshi 2005 that discovered an increase of total cholesterol and LDL in lean women after 2 weeks of skipping breakfast has shown to be increased. This study indicates that total plasma and LDL cholesterol concentrations increase after the skipping breakfast period. However, fasting plasma, HDL cholesterol, and triglyceride concentrations show no differences between the period of eating breakfast and skipping breakfast. Therefore, I would like to conclude that breakfast is considered to be one of the most important meals of the day for nutritional intake, especially to maintain overall good and healthy body, as well as to avoid any health consequences.
So, the information in the article I read that day is accurate lah. If a person loves to skip breakfast, he is more likely to become obese and develop serious health diseases such as type 2 diabetes and cardiometabolic syndrome. I feel like I need to start eating breakfast after hearing this Hanim argument just now. But before I and the audience create a new habit of eating breakfast in the morning, Miss Amira, could you perhaps also add on to Miss Hanim's point by discussing the benefits of breakfast with us so that we are more motivated to develop this new routine?
Thank you, Ms. Atika. It is an honor for me to be able to share my knowledge among these experts. Okay, first, let's touch on the most highlighted benefit of eating breakfast, which is able to lose weight. Is this statement true? Yes, no, maybe. Actually, there have been different results of research regarding the effect of weight loss among breakfast consumers and also breakfast keepers. Generally, it is divided into three. First, some studies discovered that breakfast consumers lose more weight compared to breakfast keepers. A meta-analysis conducted by Horikawa in 2011 discovered that globally there was a positive association between skipping breakfast and increased risk of overweight and obesity. The plausible reason for weight gain among breakfast keepers were found to be related to the aspects of dietary behavior and unhealthy satiety, which could result in higher total energy intake. Compared to breakfast keepers, breakfast consumers often displayed health-related behaviors that help them maintain or lose weight. This is related to both dietary and physical activity aspects. Breakfast consumers, according to Faid Moore in 2019, often consume a variety of food during breakfast and during the rest of the day, while Vander Heiden in 2007 highlighted the aspect of them consuming food high in fiber and nutrient intake, and also performing frequent physical activity that could help in maintaining or losing weight as mentioned by Betts in 2014 and also Clayton and James in 2016. Second, studies also report that breakfast keepers lose more weight compared to breakfast consumers. Unlike the previous statement, right, this was highlighted in a recent meta-analysis conducted by Bonnet in 2020, which found that a short-term benefit of losing weight could be found among breakfast keepers. However, we need to understand that compared to breakfast consumers, breakfast keepers have lower daily energy intake than recommended. According to Spence in 2017, we need to aim to consume around 15 to 25% of our daily energy intake at breakfast, which could be estimated to be about 300 to 500 calories for women, while 375 to 625 calories for men. This low energy intake in a way may be the reason why weight loss occurs among breakfast keepers. And third, other studies conducted such as by Sklan in 1992, Durandar in 2014 and Sievert in 2019 discovered that for people who ate breakfast and those who did not, there was no significant difference in weight loss. So actually there are three different opinions whether breakfast is related to weight loss. However, it is important to note that often review discovered that these studies were not randomized controlled trials. It was done in a short period of time, and when studies were done, they did not control the diet intervention. Therefore, it is difficult to know whether the breakfast consumption or skipping breakfast could lead to weight loss or not in the long term, and more research is needed to confirm these issues.
However, despite some studies discovering the short-term effect of weight loss among breakfast keepers, I believe that there are more complications of skipping breakfast, just as Ms. Hanim has highlighted, right?
Right. Okay, let's look back into the importance of breakfast consumption. I would like to highlight that breakfast consumers are more prone to consume adequate amounts of daily energy intake as opposed to breakfast keepers, based on my previous statement that breakfast keepers have lower daily energy intake than recommended. Because of this adequate consumption, WHO have stated that regular breakfast consumption is associated with higher intake of micronutrients. This is especially true when an individual consumes fruits and vegetables and avoids soft drinks during breakfast. The same issue had been found in the recent year in 2017 by American Heart Association, in which 74% of breakfast keepers did not meet 2/3 of the recommended dietary allowance for vitamins and minerals, compared with 41% of those who consumed breakfast. This 2/3 of micronutrient loss among breakfast keepers really highlighted the importance of consuming breakfast with nutrient-dense food. As we all know, vitamins and minerals lower the risk of cardiometabolic risk due to the presence of antioxidant properties. Breakfast consumers which have been related to consuming higher intake of vitamins and minerals have been found to have lower risk of cardiometabolic risk, as mentioned by American Heart Association in 2017. Also, a study conducted by Cahill found that 27% of cardiometabolic risks, such as coronary heart disease, are more profound amongst regular breakfast keepers. Moreover, meta-analysis conducted by Bonnet in 2020 showed that breakfast consumption could lower the LDL cholesterol, or we call it bad cholesterol, and triglycerides level in the blood, thus showing that consumption of breakfast could lead to lower risk of cardiometabolic risk. Despite these benefits, breakfast consumers need to also be mindful of what types of food they eat during breakfast and throughout the day, because a study by McFarlane in 2016 discovered that eating high-fat breakfast regularly would also increase the risk of cardiometabolic risk.
Ms. Amira, previously you have shared with us that there are different opinions regarding weight loss in breakfast consumers and breakfast keepers. I am curious, is there any difference in the effect of the amount of food consumed and meal timing?
Yes, there are. That's a good question, and something that I was about to share as well, as we are discussing breakfast in relation to the topic of chrononutrition. Okay, so eating high-calorie breakfast will induce greater weight loss compared to eating high-calorie food at dinner for both overweight and obese women. A study conducted by Dr. Bowick in 2013 discovered that eating high-calorie food during breakfast reported a greater weight loss, BMI, body fat, and waist circumference reduction compared to eating high-calorie food at dinner time. However, these differences were only detected at the end of the 32-week follow-up period. This showed that greater effect could be seen when a study was done in a longer period of time due to the need of the body to adjust to the current dietary intake. Other than that, the same study also discovered that eating high-calorie food during breakfast would also be able to induce better response in serum ghrelin and lipids, appetite scores, and insulin resistance. What does this mean? It means that consuming higher calorie breakfast are able to reduce more body fat related to lowered serum lipids as previously mentioned, able to reduce more feeling of hunger and increase satiety as indicated by lowered serum ghrelin, or also known as hunger hormone, and lastly, able to improve insulin sensitivity and glucose tolerance among breakfast consumers. With the discovery of improved glucose profile, it may be beneficial to reduce cardiometabolic risks such as type 2 diabetes mellitus and coronary heart disease. My last point is that breakfast consumers will be able to sleep better. According to a study conducted by Gwyn and Lady in 2018, it is found that breakfast has positive regulatory effects on metabolism, which may affect an individual's sleeping period. Breakfast consumption led to greater plasma melatonin concentrations across the overnight hours, which helps an individual to sleep better compared to when an individual skips breakfast. According to Chin in 2003, an individual who lives a nocturnal life by skipping breakfast, consuming more than 50% of their daily food intake in the evening and night, and sleep between 1:30 to 8:30 in the morning are prone to have lower melatonin level that could cause them to have sleep disturbance. Nocturnal here means active at night. And these nocturnal habits would actually impair the glucose and insulin levels and will likely be associated with an increase of cardiometabolic risk factors such as obesity and diabetes. Thus, this suggested that breakfast consumption would lead to a protective effect against cardiometabolic risk and be able to improve sleeping hours.
Whoa, there are so many advantages to eating breakfast every day. It seems like breakfast would be able to benefit individuals by providing adequate energy, increase the intake of macronutrients, has protective effect against cardiometabolic risk, able to lower the lipid profile, perform greater weight loss, BMI, body fat, and waist circumference, reduce hunger, increase satiety, improve insulin sensitivity and glucose tolerance, and lastly, able to sleep better. Whoa, I've become more and more motivated to start this new routine, and I believe that audience out there are also feels the same. Okay, now let's move on to the next question. Miss Amira, is there any precise time when we should have breakfast in order to fully benefit from all we have just spoken about breakfast?
The definition of breakfast varied across studies. However, it can generally be defined as breaking 10 to 12 hours fast after your last meal. For example, if a person is having dinner by 8 p.m., he will break his fast by having his breakfast at, yes, 8 a.m. There is no perfect time for everyone. The exact timing will vary depending on a person's needs and schedule, but a good rule of thumb is to eat within an hour or two of waking to get your body primed for a successful day. The sooner you eat your breakfast after you wake up, the better it is for your metabolism. According to Nutritionist Ministry of Health Malaysia, the ideal time to take the first meal would be between 7 and 8:30 in the morning, mainly so that you can set yourself up for a second meal after a few hours later. If needed, morning tea would be around 10 to 11 in the morning.
I see. But what if you are not truly hungry in the morning? Some people may skip breakfast due to not feeling hungry.
This may be indicative of other problematic eating habits, such as very late night snacking. If you eliminate that snacking and then wake up hungry and eat a good breakfast, your overall dietary pattern and health status are going
to be much better.
Oh, you got me there. I really need to change my eating timing. Miss Amira, it is important for everyone to eat a well-balanced breakfast of essential nutrients, right? What does an ideal healthy breakfast consist of?
Yes, you are right. In the morning when we get up, we need to kickstart our metabolism as it is low due to the body being in sleeping mode during the night. And the right food is needed for that. Many people fail to understand what a good healthy breakfast is, but it's actually the same as with any meal, balance. We need to ensure that what we consume for breakfast does not just include carbohydrates, but also good proteins, vitamins, minerals, and fibers. A well-balanced breakfast should contain one of each of the following components. First, any fiber-rich carbohydrate source. Carbohydrate provides us with energy and fuel for the day ahead, as well as being a valuable source of fiber to protect gut health. Choices could include whole grain bread or low sugar or high fiber breakfast cereal. Second, protein source. Protein is important for growth and repair in the body. Including a protein source in our breakfast can help us feel fuller for longer, as well as protect muscles. These include yogurt, milk, eggs, or nuts. And third, we also need to include fruits or vegetables. These are valuable sources of vitamins, minerals, and fibers. Choices include tomato, mushroom, apple, or banana. There's something that I want to mention. Eating a healthy morning meal does not have to be time consuming. Instead, go for an easy option like whole grain cereal with low-fat milk and walnuts, or whole grain toast with boiled eggs, or even yogurt and fresh fruit. However, if you have enough time, then go on and make some fried rice or fried noodles, noodle soup, chicken or fish porridge, following the 3 components that I have mentioned just now, with a small addition of fat or oil. Other breakfast tips that I can share is that, if possible, try and make breakfast an opportunity to sit down with family or work colleagues. With this, not only will you be able to strengthen relationships and socialize, but you will also not tend to skip breakfast. Next, make sure to include some fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables often get forgotten, hence, this is also a great opportunity to add something to our day, and there are actually a lot of delicious options. Also, make sure to read the food labeling instead of believing marketing claims. Some breakfast cereals can sometimes use fancy packaging, marketing, and nutritional claims to make us believe that they are a choice which is good for us. So it's important to be aware that sometimes these products can be heavily processed with lots of added sugar.
So a good morning meal or breakfast should incorporate 3 things: fiber-rich carbohydrate source, proteins, as well as fruit or vegetables. I believe that including protein sources in our breakfast can help us keep hunger under control, hence cutting down on unnecessary snacking later and enabling us to make smarter choice at lunch, right? Ms. Amira has also shared with us other tips for breakfast, including eating breakfast together with family members or colleagues. Make sure to include some fruits and vegetables, and also read food labeling to prevent consuming cereals or heavily processed foods with lots of added sugar. Thank you, Ms. Amira, for the wonderful input. Maybe the audience and including me can follow this recommendation starting from now on. Okay, moving on. I personally think that the issue of skipping breakfast is one of the popular cases that occur in our society and need to be taken seriously to avoid other health consequences. So my question to Ms. Hanif, what do you think is the intervention to overcome this issue?
That's such a wonderful question, Ms. Atika. I personally think that the interventions that are suitable to be done is by using social media to create awareness. People nowadays are using their mobile phones, right? So we can involve the social media influencers to promote having breakfast to influence people following this good habit. The Ministry of Health Malaysia itself also can put up posters and awareness in the social media platform, as well as a website to spread the benefits of having breakfast. Other than that, we can hold webinars or interactive forums on televisions, which will attract more people from the older range to become aware of the advantages of having breakfast. The television and radio also can play their part, such as promoting awareness regarding facts from skipping breakfast.
That is such a great idea. Other than that, we can also spread the benefits of having breakfast through campaign and educational poster, right?
Yes, not just that, teachers, schools, universities, and the workplace should take part in promoting awareness, like hanging the posters by the wall so that people are aware regarding this good habit.
I completely agree with Ms. Hani's suggestion just now. Apart from what Ms. Hani just said, I would like to add one more point. I believe that parenting from home is the most important step. Parents need to implement a breakfast routine with their children so that they can continue to practice this routine until they are adults. Oh no, our podcast session has now come to the end. Time is so envious of us that it's appear that our invited guests still have a lot more things to say about skipping breakfast. But it's okay. Maybe we can do a second episode podcast under the same topic, which is chrononutrition. But this time we will talk about different aspect. Okay, to wrap up our podcast session today, we have learned what chrononutrition is and how it relates to skipping breakfast. Then we learned about the advantages of having breakfast and the consequences of not doing so. Next, we have also figured out when the best time for breakfast. Moreover, we are given some advice on how to develop good breakfast habits. And lastly, we also discuss what steps the government and society should take to encourage nations to eat breakfast. Our discussion today has been very beneficial, and I hope that everyone of the audience can take the information that has been shared and put it into practice in our daily life. I would like to express my gratitude to all of the audience who listen to this podcast, and as well as our invited guests for sharing such valuable information with us today. If anyone in the audience has any questions for our guest today, please leave them in the comment section on the right side of the screen. Okay, that's all for today. And I apologize if there are any shortcomings in today's podcast. Thank you again to all the audience for asking questions to the guests. Hope to see you again in the next episode of my podcast. Bye.